Hi folks, so today is sweet potato harvesting day. It's the 25th of September. It is a beautiful sunny day, which is ideal for getting the sweet potatoes out of the ground and starting the curing process. We're going to talk to you a little bit about how we cure and store our sweet potatoes today, as well as harvesting. So T65 sweet potatoes on both sides here. We've grown twice as much as we normally do this year. So let's have a look at how our harvest is going to come off for 2023. I've got Dan and Murph with me to help today, so let's get cracking. Okay, so we're going to start by cutting back some of the vines so we can see what we're actually working with and where the base of the potatoes start, because these have actually gone crazy over the last couple of weeks. This here in the centre is our path, and literally 2 weeks ago it was still a nice wood chip path, but now it has been completely taken over by the vines. So we're going to have a good clear. This can all go onto our compost, so it's amazing compostable material, and then we can see where we're at. And Dan is using his jungle parang, and I'm using my hori knife just to kind of whip through the vines, because it's actually easier than keep snipping with secateurs. So yeah, hopefully we get this done nice and quick. So I always get a bit nervous around this stage of harvest to see if we are actually going to end up with any crop. I mentioned in my last video, I know we've had rats around this year. We had them underneath all the sweet potatoes in tunnel 1 earlier on in the season, and then they seemingly disappeared and I haven't been seeing them. And my fear was that they had come up and started on our outdoor sweet potatoes. And now I've just uncovered the first stem of where there should be a cluster of potatoes, and there is a big hole underneath and no tubers. So we'll keep going. Fingers crossed we are actually going to get something to harvest and that the rats haven't obliterated everything. So it's a pretty big clearance job getting rid of all of this greenery first. And if you feel like you recognise this foliage, it is because sweet potatoes are in the same family as morning glory, bindweed. So it's like a ginormous version of bindweed, but at least the roots aren't so invasive. And if we're lucky, we'll end up with some amazingly delicious tubers from the roots instead. Cleared away all the vines now, and we've got a big pile of foliage that will fill up the rest of the compost bay that we're adding to at the moment. And then what we've actually decided to do is save a pile of the greenery, and we're actually going to spread that back over the bed and then probably run the mower over it to chop it all up and let it break down and give back to the bed. So kind of like a chop and drop, ready for when we plant the potatoes here again next year. But yeah, so feeling a little bit nervous. There are lots of dig holes around nearly all of the sweet potatoes, so not feeling too confident about what we're going to get, but fingers crossed. Let's hope it's our lucky day. Okay, so we're hopefully starting with a good one. We've got a plant here that hasn't got any tunnels underneath. So we're going to start with this one and hopefully get off on the right foot. So Dan is going to get stuck in and see what we've got.
Let's get excavating. Nice one going off in this direction there. Okay, yeah, not bad for plant one.
So plant number one was a reasonable success, but we did choose an unchewed plant. So now Dan's working up that end of the bed and I'm going to start harvesting this end, and fingers crossed, let's see what we've got. So, I've got another one here which doesn't look like it's got any tunnels around it. So, I've got a little bit of hope. The tubers were actually planted a little bit deeper this year. If you've been watching our videos for a while, you might know that we often plant them on mounds, but we find that the birds love to dig up the mounds, so there's always something that you're kind of working with. So yes, we planted them a lot deeper this year. That could make the harvesting more difficult if they've gone down into our clay layer. That's assuming we've got tubers down here. So, see how it goes. We usually can see like I call it a bunch of potatoes at the surface where the tips are just poking through, but like I say, that's normally when we plant in mounds, and Dan did put them all in quite a lot deeper this year. And the soil, I think where we've had so much rain recently, the soil's actually feeling really, really compact. Okay, so this first plant, whilst it hadn't been dug into by the rats, it was actually a Molokai purple, and they tend not to grow very well for us outside here. They just come out really thin and stringy like this. So yeah, unfortunately nothing harvestable from that plant. That can go back on the compost pile. Okay, so this plant looks like a T65. I didn't realise Dan had planted any Molokais. But yeah, this one looks like a T65. Not dug into, but I'm just not seeing any good tubers yet. This may not be our year for sweet potatoes, folks. But it's always swings and roundabouts with the crops. I can't wait to get my pumpkin harvest in, because if I get that in the next few days before the rats start on those, we have got an awesome harvest of winter squash and pumpkins coming up. So it might be that that is our winter staple for this year. Oh, this is disappointing so far. Not what we want to be seeing. And the soil is actually so compact this year. Dan's actually just gone off to get a fork because I think we're going to have to loosen it slightly, whereas normally we only harvest with our hands, but we have had so much rain this summer, which is great in one regard. But yeah, obviously it does take its toll in other areas. Okay, so finally on plant number 6 or 7, I've actually found a couple of sweet potatoes. And funnily enough, Murph knew because he's just come straight in on this one as well. So maybe we need to use him as a sniffer dog and tell us which ones we need to harvest. They are down deep and it looks like it's only a couple of potatoes, but I'm pretty excited. I finally got some. It's going to be fun getting them out though. The soil is heavy this year. I need paws like you, Murph, to dig with. Here we go. There we are, that's my first sweet potato of the year. It's not quite the size that we're normally used to, but it's better than nothing. This side is the shadier part of the bed as well, and also Dan did say this is the side he planted out the weaker slips on. So hopefully if the rats haven't taken everything, when we get to the other side, we might get a few better potatoes. But I think even Dan down that end is getting a few more than me, because that is the sunnier end of this bed. Here we go. Down into the clay. It's another little one. Any more? Got a couple more in there. Oh, I broke that one a little bit, but that bit would just heal up. So that there is my first successful plant of sweet potatoes for this year. The tubers certainly are not as big as we've seen them, but at least it's something. And Murph is making sure I don't miss any now. Okay folks, so this is our harvest from one half of our sweet potato growing area this year. And I have to say, I'm pleased we've got something, but this is not the sort of harvest that we are used to. We've got a couple of good sized ones. I think this is our biggest potato so far, but normally with the T65s, we get loads of potatoes this size, and you can check back over our previous videos that we've made over the last few years to see some of the really good harvests that we get. But yeah, the rats have really got the better of us this year. That is definitely what the issue is. They've been chewing off the stems just as they've been, like the main stem, just as the plants have been getting going. And so that's resulted in either no potatoes at all from the plants, or just a much smaller yield where it's re-rooted and sort of started again. But obviously that's set the plant back a lot. So we're going to start harvesting the other side of the bed now. And whilst there are a lot of rat tunnels that we can see, we're hoping for a slightly better harvest, because that side gets much better sunlight than this side of the bed. Whilst we're doing that, these potatoes are now starting the first stage of their curing process. So what we do, ideally, like I said at the start, choosing a sunny day to harvest your sweet potatoes is best. And then as we're going, we're knocking off any big chunks of mud and dirt that are on them. So just try and get as much off as possible. And then we're laying them out in a single layer on these trays and leaving them in the sun. And that's going to start drying off the potatoes and curing them. So we're feeling pretty disappointed so far. Dan has been harvesting away on the second half of this bed, and we've literally only got a handful of sweet potatoes so far. Whereas in previous years, from just one of these sides, we've had a really big pile of potatoes, enough to see us through for many months in the winter. So he has just pulled out a good one there. There looks like another one coming. So we will have a few sweet potatoes to enjoy, but nowhere near what we are used to getting from this space and from the effort that goes into growing the slips and nurturing the plants when they're young. That's actually where most of the effort is. And then of course at this stage, all the clearing and harvesting. But yeah, really disappointing. Obviously, the rat situation is a really hard thing for us. We grow organically here. We use only natural materials. We only eat organic food as much as possible for what we do buy in. We use all natural products for everything, cleaning, body. And so obviously we want to try and keep our land as clean as we can. So with that in mind, we don't like using the chemical strong rat baits that you can get. And this year we've tried a number of different things which have had some levels of success. We use water buckets for rats and mice, and I've made up 2 different types of natural rat bait, because one of the things that I'm concerned about is other animals that might eat the poison if you put down the normal poison, and then also particularly the owls. We've got so many owls around here, and if a rat or a mouse gets poisoned and then the owl takes the mouse or the rat, then it will too get poisoned when it digests what it's caught for its dinner. So it's something that, yeah, we try and be really careful with, but it's actually really difficult when you get situations like this where you've basically lost a whole year's harvest. Even though you've been trying to use natural measures, it is really disappointing. So if any of you guys have got any tips or pointers as to how you manage these things, or just any ideas, we would absolutely love to hear them. Right, so this is a perfect example of why we're not getting any sweet potatoes this year. So this is like the main stem of the sweet potato that grows once the plant's taken hold. And then normally this branches off into what I call a bunch of sweet potatoes. And it's kind of like fingers that go down into the ground. But what's happened here, and you can see from all this crazy roots, fine root growth that's coming off this, is the main stem here has actually been chewed right through. So it's been stunted. And then the sweet potatoes, because of their natural growing habits, are just sending out new roots. So you don't know that the plant has been affected because they are constantly root layering all the time. So the plant doesn't actually die back. So it shows no sign that your crop is going to be affected, unless, like in my polytunnel, you notice that something's been digging around where all the stems are beforehand. Okay guys, as we've been harvesting, we've been racking our brains as to how we can counteract this issue going forward. And I've just harvested about 6 plants, and I've had the first plant that I've got a decent harvest of potatoes from. And it just dawned on me that when I was doing that last bit of filming and Dan pulled out a decent potato, it was along this front row here again. And then I realised it's the plants that are right next to these taros that Dan has planted this year. And the taro has a compound in it which supposedly things like rats and mice, vermin don't like. So we think we may have just come up with a natural solution. Next year, when we plant our sweet potato beds, instead of just having the taro along the footpath like we've got this year, we're going to dot them throughout the beds and see if that helps our sweet potato yields. So one of the things that we notice the more years that we've been gardening is how different every year is, and to try and never become reliant on any one crop. That is one of the reasons why we grow such a variety of things here. Some years we've had amazing sweet potato crops that have kept us going for a long time, but other years we haven't had such good winter squash and pumpkins. This year our sweet potatoes aren't looking the best, but if I can get my pumpkins harvested in the next few days before the rats set in on those, we have got an epic harvest of pumpkin and winter squash coming up. So that will help to see us through the winter and offers really delicious warming winter food for us. And of course the other great thing about today is that it's been a beautiful sunny day, and we have been outside in the fresh air soaking up the beautiful autumn sun. There's not many other ways that I would really rather spend my day, even if we haven't had the harvest that we're used to. Okay guys, so this is our outdoor T65 sweet potato harvest for this year. For the volume we've planted, it is our worst harvest to date, but at least we do have some sweet potatoes to enjoy for the next few months, which we are hugely grateful for. We're going to go and check our second polytunnel in a minute and see if the rats have been in there as well. If they haven't, that could be our saving grace. So we'll be harvesting from the tunnel soon. We know tunnel 1 has been ratted, so we haven't checked if tunnel 2 has. That'll be another video coming soon. If you want to see how big you can get your outdoor harvest from T65 sweet potato in the UK, then check back over some of our other videos from the last 2 or 3 years. We have had some epic outdoor harvests when we haven't had so many rats around. But yeah, we're definitely going to be looking into doing a bit more research about the taro, because it makes sense when you think about how indigenous people have planted over the years and how they've learnt about gardening. It's all through observation. They didn't have the internet and so many books many years ago, so they must have just learnt through trialing different things and through observation, just like what I noticed today with the plants growing next to the taro. So it's definitely something we're going to look into, and it's definitely something that we may as well give a try next year. This bed will look beautiful with more taro and sweet potato dotted through it. I hope you've enjoyed this video today. We are now going to take these potatoes into our polytunnel, and we're going to put them in there to dry off just a little bit more, and that is stage 2 of the curing process. If you have enjoyed this video today, give it a thumbs up, leave us comments and questions below. We love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you here again soon. Peace and plants.
Me wind and rain, you're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite.